Life changed forever with the Industrial Revolution. Cities rose and large factories developed. These factories drew workers away from their homes and into large cities.
Poor people, the factory workers, moved into cheap slums near the factories so they could get to work. Because they didn't get a lot of money from their jobs in the factories, most of them were forced to move into overcrowded slums with unhealthy living conditions.
The rooms they had to live in were dirty and messy. Often trash covered the floors in the whole building. Rats, living side by side with the humans, caused a lot of diseases to spread. They had no running water and often had used dirty water contaminated with bacteria. Most rooms had no plumbing, so everyone had to use one outhouse.
The rooms were crowded. Often 10 people were squished together in one small room. Everyone was affected by crime and alcoholism.
The air was very polluted because of the proximity to the factories. When people got sick of the air pollution, the dirty water, the rats, and all the diseases, in most cases they died because they had no money for doctors.
For the most part of the day, parents and children had to work in their factories, and child labor was common. Workers had 12-hour shifts in dangerous environments with a lot of machinery. Accidents at work were not uncommon. If the workers got injured, bosses would fire them without any reimbursements. The life in the slums was hard, and survival was priority.
But things would change at the beginning of the Progressive Era. Muckraking, the journalism that would change America. One man changes his life in New York City forever. It was the muckraking journalist Jacob Riis. He was the first person to go into the slums and take pictures of the misery and distress that people suffered from.
He published a book called How the Other Half Lives, and his pictures were shown in public. These are some of the pictures that changed America. The pictures opened the eyes of the rich people because they had no idea about what was going on in the slums. They made the decision that something had to be done. The Progressive Era was an era of change for the better. The governor started to pass laws that would better the situations for the workers in the slums. The minimum wage law was passed, ensuring an adequate wage for the workers so they could live a decent life.
Because people now had more money, more people could afford moving out of the slums and moving into small houses. They passed a law prohibiting child labor and mandating children to go to school to get an education. This put a stop to children suffering from having to work long shifts in factories with dangerous conditions.
At the end of the Progressive Era, the 18th Amendment was released, prohibiting alcohol. Life quality was also increased by the passing of the law of meat inspection on graded meat and the Pure Food and Drug Act requiring an expiration date.
To clean up the slums, sewers were installed and the garbage collection started. Parks and other public institutions like libraries and playgrounds were also built in this area, open for all the public to use.
Slowly but surely, slums were removed and the life quality improved for the people. The laws of the Progressive Era ended the suffering of many people throughout the Industrial Revolution, thanks to muckraking journalism.
Cities rose.
So now let's talk about some more events happening in the industrial ages. There were lots of advances in technology. There was, we had electric power. There were new ways to travel. First, we have electricity. So early attempts at electric power were in the 1700s. They just never could really find a way to harness electricity and put it to use. But in 1831, English chemist Michael Faraday discovered the connection between magnetism and electricity, and his discovery led to the dynamo, a machine that generated electricity by moving a magnet through a coil of copper wire. Faraday used the electricity to power an electric motor, and his discoveries led to the development of electrical generators. Thomas Edison developed the first usable and practical light bulb in 1879. This new invention caused a sensation. Now, transportation used to be few and far between. With the Industrial Revolution, we have the first airplane, we have the steamboat, or the steamship here, and we have the first Model T automobile. For communication, today we have news and messages travel around the world in seconds. Text messages, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. I mean, news is instant. But before all that, the telegraph was invented. The telegraph was, you were able to send messages through wires, and you used Morse code to send those messages. In 1844, Morse received funding from the United States government to lay 35 miles of telegraph wires between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, Maryland. The first telegraph message Morse tapped out was, "What hath God wrought?" With this message, a new era in communication technology began. Then you have the telephone. American Alexander Graham Bell, a teacher of the hearing impaired students, was one of the scientists working in sound technology. Bell tried to create a way to send multiple telegraph messages at the same time. While working on that device, Bell made a remarkable discovery. And one day in 1876, he was in one room and an assistant, Thomas Watson, was in another, and Bell said, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you." Watson can hear Bell's voice not just through the air, but also through the device's receiver. And there the telephone was born. The radio and the phonograph, although the telephone revolutionized communication, this technology was limited. The wires could only stretch so far. A new wireless technology was based on theories around electromagnetic waves. Marconi used this discovery to build a wireless telegraph or a radio. First used as a communication method for ships, the radio was later used for entertainment and news. So lots of scientific and medical achievements occurred in the Industrial Revolution. You have Charles Darwin. He wrote the book on the origin of species. Darwin, through careful observation of what he saw on his journey, Darwin developed the concept of natural selection. According to this theory, creatures that are well adapted to their environments have a better chance of surviving to produce offspring. That offspring will inherit the physical features that help the creatures survive. Over time, Darwin argued that species will evolve or change to improve its survival chances. This idea became known as the theory of evolution. Darwin's theory was, and still is, controversial. You also have Dalton. He developed the modern atomic theory. An essential part of this theory is the idea that atoms of different elements are themselves of different size and mass. Mendeleev arranged all the chemical elements into a chart called the periodic table. You can thank him for that when you enter chemistry. And then you have Marie Curie and Pierre Curie are a couple. The Curies concluded that certain elements release energy when they break down. Marie Curie called this process radioactivity. And then, of course, we have Einstein. Einstein made lots of huge discoveries that revolutionized physics during the Industrial Revolution. So we break through with lots of medical discoveries in the Industrial Revolution. Pasteurization occurs here. This is the process that destroys bacteria that causes diseases. Today, most milk, cheese, and juice on our grocery shelves have been sterilized or made germ-free through pasteurization. Before that, you just received what was there. Nothing was cleaned. Medical care was improved. One of the treatments was for pain. Surgery patients suffered terribly. American surgeon Crawford Long discovered a solution. Long had his patients breathe in a gas called ether. It was an anesthetic, a drug that reduces pain and in large doses makes the patient unconscious. Long performed the first painless operation by administering ether. So we were able to make that discovery. There were new ideas in social sciences. So psychology is an idea where we have time to think and we think about our thinking. One of the famous thought psychologists was the Russian psychologist Ivan Pavlov. He used dogs as research subjects to prove that animals could be conditioned or taught to have certain reflex actions. In his study, Pavlov rang a bell each time he fed the dogs. Over time, Pavlov discovered that instead of daily only salivating at the sight or smell of food, the dogs salivated when they heard the bell. Pavlov called his reaction the conditioned reflex. By studying the dog's behavior, Pavlov concluded that human behaviors are also the series of connected conditioned reflexes. Freud was another famous psychologist. Freud argued that an unconscious part of the mind contains thoughts of which one is unaware. Hypnotism was one of the techniques Freud used to explore the